Yeah, that's what he said. I can't remember what these buttons do.
It says live.
I know it's live. I want you to test the audio. Testing. 1, 2, 3.
There's little meters on there.
Well, look here.
Hmm?
You're the guy that knows all this stuff. I don't know what. Testing. 1, 2,
Yeah,
3.
the meters look good, so the sound is probably good, but it's always good to.
I don't remember how to turn it up. Testing. 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, sounds good.
All right. Yeah. Good job.
All right, but can you just leave it with, well, I'll put it in my pocket then. Because I might say detrimental things.
It's
Sure.
not going out. It's not going anywhere right now.
No?
There's the receiver.
Except to the NSA, because they're monitoring us.
Double blue,
You're good. I can see it.
double blue.
I'll just hang this from here until we're ready. Actually, I probably should do this. But it should be fine. We're going to start in like 10 minutes anyway.
I better go out and get my cookie and
All right,
my, and
so
my expired Mountain Dew.
No,
it's not expired.
he bought new. He's splurged.
I aim to please. Let's see, rotting your teeth out all by yourselves.
Diet soda has no sugar.
So the other chemicals.
Yeah, they all rot.
Yeah, it's got, what has it got?
It used to be the aspartame. I don't
No. Mountain Dew has something really weird, like something that Dow or DuPont makes. It starts with a V. It's a.
Well, it was known for rotting kids' teeth out. Rotten
But
teeth
not
of
the
kids.
diet stuff.
Not the diet. Would you like a Princeton University lab booklet for prosperity here? This has probably been the same printing since the 1930s. I have no idea what any of this stuff is. Wow. Well, our Hamfest NJARC that we put up
Hold
during.
on, I'm hearing the recording of
Oh.
this.
No, I'm saying at our Hamfest show. The one that you ordered, the roll-up one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's great. It really, Jerry puts it together every year, takes it down every year. And then,
Yeah, I always wanted to get one of these, hang it up, we can hang it in Voyager here. And at the swap meets.
yeah,
I used to bring that stupid projector and put the logo up with the projector,
remember that.
but this is a lot easier and much lower tech. I threw the projector out, by the way.
you got all those books outside?
Hmm?
You got all those books from outside?
Matt got them, yeah.
Oh.
I guess that was Ray giving them away.
sure we can see this thing on the screen. Yeah, enough. That'll work. Oh, we got a good one. Much nicer. Oops. Yep, we are running there. That goes in there. Backwards. Alright, so that means I've got to put it upside down. Upside down. This side. No,
Like
I've
at
seen
this
that- I've
size.
seen the big
Yeah,
prison
the prison one, yeah.
That looks like that was actually made as a demo because you can tell by the coloring on the speaker, they actually colored some of the things. But the clear plastic was made for prisons,
Yeah.
that they can see inside them, obviously.
I'm pretty sure it'll work. I just gotta find me a 12-volt, 10 watt wall board.
Well, if you have a problem, I have over 2
Yeah.
dozen of them at home.
Yeah, I was gonna say I don't think this is the group where I'm gonna have trouble finding one. Like, gee, I hope one of us does. Yeah. Gee, I hope one of us has a wall board.
That's gotta be the most common wall board,
Yeah.
12 volt, 2 amps. You're absolutely.
So long as the connector is the most
The right
common.
way, yeah.
I've done a lot of harvesting of them and putting on other ones, yeah.
Well, it's a 2.1 by 5.3 millimeter.
Yeah.
Like I said, I've got dozens of them.
You got the mic thing, right?
I do. There's no
Okay.
problem. I've never seen anything like this.
Oh, this is very curated and nice. It must have been his dad.
Yeah, he was saying it. I've never even seen a mouse like that. Actually, that looks like a real mouse.
He said it was a clicker.
Oh, is it clicker?
I mean, I guess it's a mouse too, yeah. I've never seen that. Where he found that.
It's a real mouse. You put a little fur and a tail on it. Probably, it's an Evo, he probably rebuilt this. Got it a yard sale.
I was teasing him a minute ago. I'm like, has there ever been anybody in your family that wasn't technical? Like, at what point in time was your family not super intelligent and smart? Obviously, it goes back to his father for sure.
Yeah, I think his mother also was something, or somebody.
I like the flag. It turned out nicer than I would have expected.
Uh-huh. Just open chair? If you can. You're gonna be with us next Saturday, right?
Yes.
And what? Mevo app?
No.
We're good? Okay, I'd like to invite everyone and welcome you to the August 14th meeting of the New Jersey Antique Radio Club here at Princeton University, Bowen Hall. Now, I think I know the answer to this already. Are there any new faces in the group? And I don't believe so. There's some folks we haven't seen in a while, but it's nice to see Dr. Andrew, so thank you for stopping by. Appreciate that. All right, infirmary report. Unfortunately, I've got a page full of infirmary report. Unfortunately, we have too many members of on the list this month. Doug Poire is in rehab, recovering from his fall from his shed roof last month. But he's doing well. His wife, Janine, called me and said he's improving, which is a good thing. That's a rhetorical question, Walter, right? Why should anybody 80 years old be on the roof, right? Yeah. So, Paul Weidenschilling, longtime member. I spoke to him also 2 weeks ago, and he and his wife are living together in a care facility. I believe it's in Jackson also. Who? Paul Weidenschilling. You don't know Paul? Little bent over guy, glasses. No, not everybody, no. You know Paul, and he's a real sharp guy. Big collector of tubes and transistors. Yeah. Okay. And just last week, former President Phil Vortzis fell and broke his hip down in South Carolina. I spoke to him, and he is in a rehab facility, and he's hating it. He's just never experienced anything like that. He's never broken a bone before in his life, and I can commensurate with him. Yes?
Can I add one to that?
Let me just finish with Phil.
I thought you finished, I'm sorry.
No. And Phil said something that I don't know anything about. He said, I got up out of my chair, I walked across the room, and I fell down, and my hip was broken. And what's happening is, it's not just that, in my estimation, you fall, you break your hip. But nowadays, with us aging out, that he was told that his hip broke and caused him to fall. You know. So, the whole idea of bone mass detection and the supplements and the testing for women, it's not just for women, it's for everybody. Yeah, a lot of milk. Yeah. Bill.
Frank Fesco.
Frank.
He had
Frank in
spinal
Florida.
infection. And he just got out of the hospital and he's in rehab now. And he's grumpy too.
Yeah, that's right. We haven't seen him on the Zoom in a while.
He texted me about 2 weeks ago, and I spoke to his wife, and thank God she's a nurse, so she could decipher. And they don't know how he got it.
They never do.
And so they were draining him, and the last I spoke, they were transferring him to a rehab. I called him there, and he spoke maybe 5 minutes, but he was groggy. But he's got a happy camper.
Yeah.
Eat lettuce?
he suffered something else, gallbladder or something, like last
Yeah,
year?
he's got that's ongoing too.
Yeah, yeah,
He's got diabetes too.
yeah. We could go on and on. We could have a whole meeting about the woes and aches and pains. I agree.
Nothing needs to.
Yeah. All right, so like I say every month. Oh, also Sal, he's in a rehab in Jackson, but he will be moved. He'll be moving to Freehold. We're not sure yet. And thanks to John Ruccolo, he visits him quite often and finds out this information. So I'll say he's doing as well as he can. All right, that's all I can say, really. All right, on to old business. On July 25th, Signori Marconi again did not let us down. Another beautiful day in the bucolic grounds of InfoAge, where 29 vendors and 100 buyers sold and bought interesting vintage radios, test gear, boat anchors, records, and ephemera. My one little gripe that is bothering me about it is that we, as a club, we supply the vendors with complimentary bagels in the morning. But what I was seeing was buyers running in and grabbing bagels also, to the point where the vendors didn't have any bagels.
Yeah, there's no food.
No bueno.
No coffee either.
Bring your own coffee. That's how it works. I'm not going to be...
The only way to stop that is to police it.
police it. Who's going to be... Walter, you want to police it?
If I'm there, I'll
Thank you.
get to keep half of what we pay.
You have to deputize.
But honestly, I be honest, I tell you, when I came, I didn't bring, I had figured I was gonna have breakfast there, because usually you have a vendor or something, you know, egg sandwiches, that kind of thing, and I have to say, I was a little disappointed. I had to leave to get something to eat later on, but there was no food. So, and I saw what you meant, everybody, the bagels were gone, I'm sure they were great, they always are.
Yeah.
But maybe, maybe we should think, maybe differently about how we do that next time, make it a cost center, and sort of, sell stuff.
But then, well, we have when we're a pal, we do have, thank goodness, we have Fred and Judith, and Fred mans the canteen, and he's very happy to do that. He's not happy to do it at InfoAge. So.
You didn't have a sign that said food for vendors only?
Well, you've got to realize timing. The vendors set up at 7:15, open to the public at 8. And by that time, most vendors have their bagels, but sometimes they don't. So
There was no sign.
there was no sign, no. But maybe we should make a sign, okay?
I am
You think that'll stop anybody from grabbing a free bagel? A radio bagel?
I'll have to read that.
I would be glad to staff that next time. If we're gonna do it formally, let's, we'll buy some stuff, and we'll make some coffee, and we'll have, stuff available, and if people want water.
All right, so you are volunteering to do that next summer.
If I'm alive, I'll be glad to join. And
But why do you have to make it a prerequisite that you're alive?
because you never know, he's always listening,
How are the buyers supposed to know that they're forbidden to take the food? It's communication.
I tell you, such problems that we have. Okay. Anyway, how about some comments, vendors? Who was a vendor? Okay, vendors, speak.
Had a good time, everything went well, and a quick stop at Wawa solved that problem entirely on the way in.
Good, 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 good. Bill?
I had a free table, and people could make a decision. I think I picked up something, let me think about it. I think it's free.
This goes to show you radio collectors are so cheap that they even have to think twice about an item.
But I was, even the stuff I was selling, I was giving away. And I got rid of most of it, but still, I'll sell.
Still got your 170, right?
I still got the 170.
Oh, there.
The deal on that.
That reminds me of a quick little anecdote. I used to have a lot of yard sales at my house, and I had a free table, the stuff piled up top on it, And out of the corner of my eye, it was a busy Saturday morning, corner of my eye, I see a guy, and he's like taking the stuff that's on the free table and putting it on the ground. And he starts folding up the table. And I said, "What are you doing?" He said, sign says free table. Oh, boy, okay, all right.
Is that a joke?
Oh, yeah, yeah. No, I'm serious.
That's a joke, right?
No, I'm serious. I'm serious.
Was he a radio collector?
No, he wasn't even that. Oh, unbelievable. All right, any other comments about, John, how'd you make out as a buyer?
I enjoyed it, and Bill Z and I had a laugh about it later. He sold, when I was a kid, I'll tell you a real quick story. My aunt and uncle in Manhattan had a stationery store,
You embarrass me?
and they had this beautiful Telefunken radio that provided background music in the store. And it made quite an impression on me as a kid. Well, I go to our thing, and here's this, and it looked very, I don't think it was the same exact model, but the base, the dial, all that looked very similar. And Bill said, oh, it doesn't work. I plugged it in, don't hear anything. Well, when I went to pick it up later, we realized it requires external speakers. It had no speakers built in. So when you plugged it in and turned it on, you were guaranteed not to hear anything. But it's a Telefunken is a really
Did you think there was something nefarious about that?
Well, and how many times have you been told that something did work and it didn't, or you got the well, the guy I got it from told me it worked.
Well,
Maybe it does if you have speakers up there.
It's got those. I'm sure you have them, Darren. Those connectors, those German speaker connectors up there. It needs some work, but it's a really cool, like 16 or 18 tubes stereo. It's more of a stereo receiver than a.
And what'd you pay for it?
$20. Didn't work. The vendor told me it didn't work.
No sound.
Well, he was telling the truth. No sound.
Seen the moment.
that's a good story.
It was a fun.
Yeah, well, and the weather was fantastic.
No major purchases, but it was fun.
John, were you gonna bring your boat anchor to the meeting to show it to people or offer it out? Remember, it was on the communicator, you mentioned something you had.
I had no takers, so I left it home.
Oh, you must have back. One of these days I was hoping that we could do a video of your garage. Just to show,
No, well, the garage isn't really that.
well,
Darren, how'd you make out?
Walt, I was going to say, I'll make a deal with you, Walt. You buy this thing for $25 and I'll think about letting you do a video.
well, I thought you would be a good second. I thought it could be a meeting, just, exploring John Lucolo's basement and garage,
A field trip.
all the shelves.
Field trip,
and
yeah.
how long you had it.
Darren, how'd you make out?
I sold some stuff, it was slower than usual, but I sold.
Okay. Any other comments?
Darren had a ham receiver that was in even worse shape than the one Bill Z had. At least Bill's had all the tubes in it.
And John didn't even have the decency to buy it for him.
I was stuck on the internet trying to figure out, I bought a Zenith and I was trying to figure out how the dial cord gets connected.
Ooh.
And you had 5 manuals for $5.
Yes.
And the very first one had that in there for me, so I was able to figure it out with the help of those manuals. So
Oh, good.
they're very helpful.
No, they are. As a matter of fact, they're online now too. We also have them online,
Oh,
but
we do, okay.
but those were the paper ones that Jerry and Gordo scanned. Yeah. I'm glad. Usually, I'm not too good at that. You must be a very smart person because usually it's an IQ test. It's an IQ test to figure it out.
How many hands?
Well, I couldn't, every time I had tape on everything, and then finally I ended
Yeah.
up cheating at the very end. I used a little super glue to make sure the knot.
Oh, yeah, good. That's it. That's it, yeah. Now, if you really want to get a mind twister, get a nice Grundig, a nice big Grundig with about 4 different dial cords in it. Oh, yeah.
Crossing each other.
And then when you get, you run into a problem, just call Neville. He'll explain it to you over the phone how to do it.
Even the Grundig portables are that way.
Yeah. Okay, moving right along. All right. On July 12th, the annual Sussex Hamfest took place in Augusta, New Jersey. Who was vending? Who was attending? Who went? Okay, great. Jack.
Real well there.
Yeah.
Sold a lot. We had almost 300.
Can you walk
vendors.
there, Jack?
Hmm?
Can you walk there?
It's within about 4 miles of the house.
Yeah,
so
okay, good for you.
It's good news, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
But, yeah, we had, 280-some vendors and
Yeah.
over about 1,000 walked in.
Oh, that's your club up there then?
Yeah,
Okay, yeah.
And I sold a bunch of stuff. I was good. It was good because I just loaded the truck up with stuff and put it out. And prices were right, and the stuff moved away and went away, and people were happy. So
Yeah,
that was
when the
good.
prices are right, it goes.
Yep.
right? Yeah. All right, good.
I only have about 150 boxes of stuff left for the next Hamfest, or 2 or 3.
Well, Pal's coming around. Got the brochures out there.
I'll be there.
All right. Matt, you,
I don't even remember if I bought anything, so I guess it wasn't super exciting, but it was a nice day. It wasn't like, 500 degrees like it usually is. It got
Yeah.
warm towards the end. But,
all right, Walt?
I lied. I did buy something. I bought an antenna mast to put up an antenna. There's always a guy there selling the modular army poles.
Oh, okay.
So I
The
bought
ones
it.
that Nev has. Okay, great.
Did you get a scope from Beacon? You want a scope?
Sussex? No.
Oh, I'm,
I do have
At
a
Wall,
scope.
yeah.
Yeah, I got that.
Walt,
Yeah, they have very good vendors there. They also had a good food,
I tell you, why don't you get them down here and they can do it, and this way you don't have to do this.
They were first class. They already had, when I got down there, it was like maybe, I don't know, late, like 8:30 or so, they were already serving lunch.
Serving
Cheesesteak.
breakfast started at people were by about 6:30 or so. They were up and running with breakfast there for
Ah,
vendors.
ah.
That's the big
Radio
4-H
Wild
does
was
that,
that
right? The local 4-H, I think.
Whoever runs it knows what they're doing.
No, that was actually our club that had the food. Yeah.
Sussex used to make
We had to get permits and all that stuff for food handlers and everything else.
pork roll, egg and cheese.
One thing that I did notice was a little bit of a down note was that inside, they had an inside pavilion with a lot of vendors. There were a lot of empty tables there. I don't know, maybe people just didn't show up, but, it just seemed like there was a whole section where there wasn't anything.
Of course, that costs a lot more money inside, right?
Yeah, well,
It's the second year it's been about half full inside,
Uh-huh.
yeah.
and there was a few vendors less than normal, but it was
Yeah, some of them
overall the same.
are, silent keys nowadays.
Oh, sure.
And
A lot
also,
of vendors.
like inside used to be MFJ and stuff, so
Yep.
they're a
Right.
silent key, so.
Yeah.
I just, has anybody spoken to MFJ? Because I'll just tell you a story real quick. I flew
Souter.
out, Neville knows about this. We had our not the Hamfest, the field day. So I brought along my 259, D analyzer, and whatever reason was, we blew it out, So I called them, and apparently they're still actually selling stuff. You can go on the website, they're running their inventory down. I spoke to the guy, I think his name was Ken, who actually he was a technician, and he they're selling the thing, trying to find a buyer. Now, I don't know how much they're asking, but whatever it is, if they sold it, he said he would go back to fixing stuff again, and you could send him, busted equipment, and he would go through it and fix it. So the bottom line was I was able to find an analyzer there, not the one that I originally had, a cheaper one, just to be able to check the antenna on HF. And they still had other supplies as well. So even though they're out of business, you could still get stuff off of their, whatever's left kind of.
Yeah. I guess that's what happened to Fair Radio too, even though they went out of business, I think they were still selling stuff.
Yeah, and-
Somebody
and it-
in Indiana wound up with basically with the high gain antennas and with the Ameritron amplifier line, and they're looking at trying to get most of the other stuff too.
Yeah, they said when they went out of business, they would sell their stuff until the stock was gone. They just weren't, making more.
Yeah.
But they did, like you said, I saw recently, they sold some of they kept buying brands like Switchcraft and Ameritron, and so they are selling some of their intellectual property. So they probably are halfway through it.
Okay.
Switchcraft is still an independent company.
Yeah.
I could have the wrong name. I just know that they kept buying up ham manufacturers and things when they would go out. And they owned a lot of brand names. I guess I got the wrong one.
Cushcraft, maybe.
Yeah, that's it.
Oh, yeah.
Because I knew it was Ameritron and Cushcraft and
High
some
Gain.
other
All right, on July 29th, InfoH held a barbecue for all volunteers and docents who give their time to the museums and organizations. Of course, our RTM docents were invited. The luncheon was generously paid for by club member Tom, also InfoH trustee Tom Settigren. Just a reminder that if you're a docent in the RTM, when we have our holiday party in December, you as a docent can come to the party gratis. It's free for you for all the time that you spend as a docent. Any comments about that? Who attended the barbecue? Bill?
Food was good.
Food was good? Oh. How many folks?
It was catered. They had brisket, fried chicken, macaroni salad.
Marconi salad.
Yeah.
It wasn't really an outside barbecue, it was inside, but still, it was great.
It was in the dining room.
Yeah, dining room, yeah. It was
Okay.
really
How many folks do you think showed up?
good. Maybe 40, maybe.
Oh. Was the InfoH hierarchy there?
Some of them.
Okay.
And, the people from the other museums also, of course.
Yeah, yeah. All right, good, good. That was nice of them to do that. Okay. And our holiday party will be 12/12 down at Bill's house. He's cooking. Okay. All right, any other old business before I go to new business? Okay, on to new business. All right, being an active club, we have another event. Next Saturday is August 22nd, and it's our summer repair clinic in 9032A. I need to know how many experts, with a show of hands perhaps, will be helping, because otherwise we won't be having many clients. So, oh, that's great, great. Walter, you'll be there, eh?
Yeah, what day is it again?
Next Saturday,
This coming Saturday?
the 22nd.
Okay.
Next Saturday. Okay, great. All right, good.
I'm just not an expert.
What?
I said all 10, I'm just not an expert.
You're an expert.
That's not a repair.
Yeah, we had,
Handle the soldering iron without third-degree burns.
That's it, you know which end to pick
I can
up.
play them on TV.
and we had an interesting Zoom meeting last night, and Bill Slomo, who is a docent, very good docent, a great guy, and he started as an expert with us. And unfortunately, I gave him something I thought wasn't that complicated, and it wasn't, but it turned out to be. And I think he spent like 80 hours, but he actually figured it out. He's a smart guy,
So
really
you're
smart.
known as an expert after.
Well, I promised him he can't make it this next repair clinic, and I said, look, if you could make it, I'll give you an AA5, I promise. And he laughed. He just can't go. He can't go. Okay. So, all right. So that's that. All right. Ham Shack Corner, Omark has their fall ham fest, and that's on Saturday, August 29th at the Spring Lake Firehouse. I believe that's kind of small. Has anybody been there recently?
A few years ago, it was sort of fun, but it's small.
How big a space is it?
A couple dozen vendors,
Okay, all right.
and then they do have like an overhead, an over pavilion part where I think that's where the club tables are. Stuff like that.
All right, well, it's good that they're still in existence, considering where they used to be, yeah. And Garden State ARA, Hamfest is on Sunday, September 26th in the Tinton Falls, and that's in the Louis Martin Ball Field. Has anyone attended that?
It's where?
Louis Martin Ball Field in Tinton Falls.
They must have changed, because they were at some kind of vo-tech school.
Oh, yeah?
I went to, that's a nice little ham fest in the past.
Where's that again, Tinton Falls?
Tinton Falls.
So Shafto Road, does it say Shafto Road there?
No.
Yeah, they must have changed, because I never heard of this.
When
Ball
is
Field.
Molokai here?
That's in September, so.
Yeah, that's later.
Yeah, they moved it because it was in August, like, it's like Sussex, it was in August, it was always 2,000 degrees. So they moved it to, it's in September, so I'd like to go to that if I can.
Okay.
I know
All right.
the land.
All right, so that's it. Look, all right, so after a short intermission and sale of our 50/50 tickets, our very own Neville Granau will give us his presentation entitled FOSDIC and the Counting of America, or how to get 100 million census documents in a computer in the year 1960. So we look forward to that. Now, we need volunteers for sales of 50/50 tickets. And I also have something, maybe I was remiss in this, but we have this from ARRL. It's a coupon for $50 of merchandise from their catalog. And that will be auctioned off, I'm sorry, that'll be raffled off this evening also. Okay, so you will first get cash, and then you'll get this to raffle off. So don't throw your ticket away. So who's going to do it? Who's going to help? Who's going to help? Who's going to help? Thank goodness, Leo. Thank you, Leo. I wrapped them in plastic to try and keep them.
You keep them extra moist, right?
Yeah.
Oh, look, it's like an Easter basket.
So you got to train me.
All right. Short intermission, guys.
All right, I can do that.
Short intermission.
50/50. 50/50.
3 for 2. 3 for 2.
Say 3 for 2?
It's okay on Saturday if I just come and watch, so what, next week, what they're doing? I'm not that.
Next Saturday.
Yeah, next Saturday, is that okay?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, okay.
But don't bring anything because I've already canceled somebody.
No, no, I don't.
I'm just gonna plug it in and charge it while you're at break.
Well, that sounds good too. I have her daughter coming to watch her for that time, so I can go through the whole. Yeah, so thank you, Rich, I appreciate it. So don't come till 10. Yeah. Yeah. But I crazy with that. Oh, understood. All right, well, thank you very much, I appreciate that.
I need 3 over here. Okay. I'm like, I can't get off my much. I posted it on off my mind. Okay. And then you're stuck for that one. I don't know what. No, you're powerful.
Cool. All right.
I just figured you guys would.
Okay. That's better than my cat toy.
He wins, you know. I know. I would.
It's a hanging
Hanging
swinging
shad.
chad.
Hanging shad.
6.
So what is this thing, it's Saturday at 8 AM?
In Florida, 10 a.m.
What time are we doing? What time is the truck?
I think there's $2 for
Spurt, I'm a spurt, I used to be an expert, I'm an expert. Conspert. 9, okay. Okay, yeah, no, yeah, right, no vendors.
Clients get you bagels?
Client vendors are like, but you know, the thing is, it's sad. Oh, do you? From who? Who did it know?
Anybody in the
You had
township.
me said refreshments would be available.
I liked his first edition.
Mighty children. Paul, he and his wife are in a facility now. And they're living together. We talk to them on the phone. And we want to know like, where the stuff is. Stuff.
I told him I'd probably come to watch next Saturday. Well, he said no, they're like overfilled with people. But they said, yeah, they turned a guy.
How are you?
50-50, folks.
And she's taking
I
care
wouldn't
of
think
him.
you were whoever was doing it. So what is that? I wanted to say, no, he didn't have enough like guys like you actually. I would really would like.
50-50, folks, 50-50.
Buy a ticket, I lose. If I don't buy a ticket, I lose. It's the same for you.
50-50.
So he's living in a, like an
50-50.
apartment in this facility with his wife. 10 years ago. I started noticing a lot of calls, just send him to his number.
Actually, it turns out they all work. There's so many things down.
1, 2, 0, 2.
There's not a lot of force. Keep them clean, keep the cells clean. So in 50 years, they've working.
Sold. And she's taking care of everything. She first called me and she said, this
Then I realized when I tried to take it apart,
it's, you really want a house and I said, okay, well, we have JD office services. And I said, what about Paul? He says, no, don't worry about him. I said, don't even bother. That's what we have, also that was, and I did. And he's all up there, he's fine. So he's, you know, the rest of it is not so good. But, you know, again, I don't know, he and his family never met. I remember him telling me years ago, like his sisters, he used to take care of his mother, his sisters.
You gotta wonder about that, maybe if I just took them out, just set like a gallon.
So, and plus his sister lives in Maryland. He's like doing his search for a father.
Justin has, I guess I put them like, just things to put in, make that shape.
So who knows what, where.
Everything to fit in such a worldly way.
The other thing is, there's no special tools to take apart.
And it's all computer now.
Beautiful knob.
That's not easy. I always kept the knob saws without breaking them.
So in the Philips service manual, they actually have prints for the knob, for tools to remove the knob. I need to make that too.
In the green room?
There you go. That's my problem with that. I have a whole bunch of analogs.
They're looking at this stuff. None of us know what the hell it is. Never anybody is going to do that.
I've seen that thing. It's a microscope.
At the time, they were really nice digital systems.
Okay. How did you?
But they did.
That will go to my freaking attic.
Oh, your father had.
Cheese and Pacific Cheese convolutions.
Tell the story.
Never, don't touch it.
This is actual family heirlooms?
Yes.
Woo!
They were remote
Damn.
controlled by the Hewlett Packard.
This is all classified stuff. I was fairly careful about taking stuff that wasn't classified. The statute of limitations hasn't gone away. Yeah.
My wife's always on my case, what are you gonna get?
Core memory is classified, all that information.
The UNIVAC one came with mercury distillate.
Well, there you go. I mean, they don't, you can't get that at Kmart.
Oh, there's one in the Smithsonian now.
Really?
Old 1950s brush and then like this brush. I can't believe it.
had your Mercury, you had your drums, you had,
My father was a
what else did they have? They had all
Oh,
kinds of
yeah.
spent a lot of time looking at old license codes.
Oh, I understand. So I just noticed one for, on Facebook with, what they call climatic objectives, ambient climatic objectives. I think that's good.
So my new microphone didn't work, my iPad can't hear it.
Was for the highest.
Operator error.
Oh, that's
The roof stuck behind the steering wheel.
Couldn't resist it.
I'm building a scanning disc
Somebody was selling
TV.
it.
I found plans online to make it out of an Arduino and an RGB LED, and everything is 3D printed.
They didn't have the rights.
So I bought enough Chinese components and stuff to build 3 of them.
The jury somehow.
And I'll put one in the museum and one in my house.
I'll have to see that.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Jury big somehow.
That it makes a custom PCB for the
Series.
amplifier, whatever. That got that done and it's shipped already. It's amazing how you use it to do stuff.
And they sold that together. I don't know why.
I gotta figure out how to make it dumber because it's all full color. I'm like, well, this is cool, but I want it to look like a neon bulb. You know, how am I supposed to do that?
Research notes, but one of the.
Turn off the blue light.
Well, that's what I'm wondering. I was like, I wonder if it's smart enough to work like that.
Graduated better.
Good tape over.
Yeah. Well, you learn how to do it in 1960.
It's amazing how much smaller you can make this stuff with all that extra computing power and things. No tubes. Maybe you can explain, why would the square holes be better?
In a punch card?
No, in a scanning disc.
They let more light through.
That's the only reason?
I'm a fan of
Does that sound right?
Well, that's an advantage
Yeah,
for light through.
for sure.
How it changes the geometry
I
of the image.
swear I read
Don't
it.
see it.
Because I mean, if you use one more light, then make a bigger hole. Like, what am I missing?
You can't make a bigger hole. You gotta make a bigger disc, then you can make a bigger hole.
Right.
Then you gotta get a bigger neon bulb.
Physics.
The rule of microbiology is
Yeah.
really
Yeah, physics.
That's why CBS didn't work. Gary
Yeah, how they
Bird
thought
got
that
it
was
on
gonna
the,
fly.
You could do it with a 70 CRT and that was it. Because the wheel was this big around.
the 10, the disc was about,
Yeah.
about 4 feet. You ever see that picture?
If you tried to do a 15 and 16 inch tube, the edges would go ultrasonic.
Did you ever see that picture where they mocked up the 30-inch Dumont oil softener and it was set into the floor and it was like 8 or 10 feet.
Yeah, I have plenty of them. I'm thinking, who am I
To
bringing?
make the point
Who am I
that
bringing?
it wasn't really practical.
I'll
I
put it
didn't
in
realize it
case.
was a royal sovereign.
I'll wrap it in case. Thank you.
Did you get me the becoming as an expert?
I'm gonna steal your seat.
No, no, don't worry about it. My name isn't on it. Wherever. Anywhere's fine.
Hey, Bill, would you send me Frank's contact information?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, you can just pull it from the thing, flip it back on, it's still on. It's sitting on the top. You just unplug it.
Oh,
What you drop on the floor there, that's, no, no, cover for a microphone or something like that.
yeah, windy sock, okay. All right. Okay. All right, again, do not throw your tickets away. All right, we have the $50 merch coupon for ARRA. You go to their catalog and you get some good stuff, books, And I actually have a nice little windbreaker I got. I won it at another, I think it was Limemark out Long Island. I won the $50. And it was a nice little blue windbreaker. So here we go. Let's see. So, since you are the guest speaker this evening.
And I didn't buy a ticket, so I can't even pick mine.
Oh.
Ta-da!
Okay, again, the winning ticket for the $25 cash
Hey, pay
is,
the dues.
yeah, well, it might be 9, 7, 4, 1, 2, 0, 1, 2, 0, 1, 2, 0, 1, 2, 0, 1. You lose. You lose. Ta-da!
You can keep it.
The chef.
I'm put it back in the club, all right?
You are?
Yeah.
You're a wonderful man,
Well-
Walter, I tell you.
Damning me with faint praise, but keep it. Thank you.
Okay.
All right?
All
I
right.
didn't win, but that's,
All right, now, keep the ticket.
oh,
Who knows, it might happen again.
yes, you never
No,
know.
it can't
A
happen again.
three-peat.
Come to think of it, it can't happen again. All right. That's true, too. All right, so here we go for the merch, the $50 merch. All right, Walter donated it back to the club. Thank you, Walter.
What a guy.
So,
Conflict of interest.
Oh, there.
Not that one.
Oh, sorry. Let me change.
okay, for the $50 coupon from ARRL for their merchandise, the number is 974114.
Conflict of interest. I'm glad I didn't pick it.
And you told me not to pick that one.
What are you saying?
I got it.
Oh, I want to check. I got to check. Trust but verify.
I think there's some computer software.
Oh, no.
It's all A.
Yeah, he did. He got it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think AI was
All right.
correct.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You got 30 days to cash it or something like that?
12/31/26.
That's quick.
Okay, so it goes in this pocket. All right. I give it to my treasurer, but he's not here this evening. Okay, so our guest speaker, please announce yourself. As a matter of fact, give us a little bio, a short one now, not a long
Give
one.
a little bio. Well,
little
I've
one.
done- So I'll steal the microphone.
Not this one? Okay. This one works good.
Well, speakers take guesses, so what the heck. Yeah. Well, I'm Neville Greeno, been the member of the club for probably 15 years or so. And so longer than that? I've lost count, I'm getting too old. But anyway, so practiced electrical engineering for the Princeton Plasma Physics Laboratory over there on Route 1, and spent my career with high-powered RF engineering, and retired about 7 years ago, and then 5 years ago got hauled back because they kept calling me up and saying, help! So anyway, so this talk is not about me. We got to get the projector on here. And we got to get the screen to do something useful. So we got to get the screen to unblank here. Something like that. Display control and unmute. All right, there we go. Will it go any farther?
Yes, it will.
Yes, it will. Perfect.
Limited stop.
I heard something peel. All right. So this is actually the work of this gentleman here, M. Leighton Greeno, who passed away in 2011. So I only claim to be an editor because I watched all this, learned from it, found it all in the attic, and decided to put together this talk. So basically, to get into this just a little bit, we're all about this, the U.S. Census Bureau. The Census Bureau is tasked with taking surveys of everybody in the country every 10 years, and they produce aggregated data that's used for a lot of things, especially congressional purposes, things like that. So we got to get the next slide going. But you know, every good piece of gear has to have a name. And let's see, how do we get this thing to work? Worked last time I tried it, of course. All right, but it's not this kind of Fosdick. So, the guys last night put me onto this one. So anyway, so a little bit of background. The first article of the Constitution establishes a census of the country starting about 1790 to run every 10 years. They only first collected data on age, sex, race, and genealogical kinds of data. And if you go on the websites of things like Ancestry.com, this is where they got that data. Those all came out of the Census Bureau documents, which are still around from 1790. They added manufacturing data around the turn of the 1800s or so to talk about industries in the country. They started gathering more social data around 1850. They added housing, income, and economic kind of data in the early 1900s. Then the Census Bureau, as an establishment of the government, was established in 1902. And everybody wants to know who sets the questions on that census form. Well, it's the acts of Congress that sets that up and decides upon the questions to be asked to everybody in the country. So what do we do with it? What do they do with it? Well, it's population data for congressional districting, provides general data out of manufacturers around the country. What do they make? What do they do? What do they sell? And economic data, who are the richest states? Who might be the poorest states? That kind of data comes from it. All kinds of aggregate data about the population that shows up in census, congressional bills, lots more. Now, all of this the data, which starts out being personal, is classified for 72 years. So shortly, they're going to be releasing the data from the 1950 census, and you'll be able to actually find that kind of data on Ancestry.com. But 1960, what we're going to talk about here, is still undercover for a couple more years. But the aggregate data gets published as soon as they possibly can because it goes into all these things about the government, and that's available to everyone. Anyone can do anything with it. It's all owned by all of us. So how do they collect all this? Well, initially it was specified to the U.S. Marshal Service in the beginning, and later by the census folks hiring an army of volunteers, paid volunteers, to go around to every household in the country and do an interview and ask these questions and record data, often on handwritten forms. I think folks have seen that. We'll show one here, what that looked like. By 1950, there were 180,000 of these folks hired on a temporary purpose for about 3 months to go through this process and get data off of everybody's household in the entire country. And there was about 40 million or so households in 1950 to interview. So here's what some of it might look like, you know. They're going around and they're sitting down with the head of the household and they're recording the names of father and wife, you know, husband and wife, all the kids, and what their ages are, where they were born, how old they are, stuff like that, which is really just genealogical data. Lots of families like to look that up, so it's great things to have around. Now, what do you do with all this? Well, you gotta have another army of folks who are trying to look across all these forms and collate data into how many kids are in the average household, what's the average household income, maybe even by state, by region, and ask any kind of a question. These are the folks who would have attempted to answer at about 1920 or so. But that was getting to be a really big job. So automation showed up, 1910 or so. They started, the Hollerith punch card, looks like some of these things here, became available, were invented, all right, and made a standard, and became in use, and they were manually transcribing data here off this form right there, and then punching a card. Looks like not even an alphanumeric punch. You've got to figure out the columns and punch them by yourself there. That certainly, it worked, but it wasn't anything that was convenient. But they forged on with that for quite a few sets of years. Now, to get up to about 1930, now we start to get a little more automation. This is actually a 1950s picture, but that is an IBM card sorter, which you can actually do a little programming for. You can ask one question and another question and put them together and get this thing to sort the cards that answer those both questions, things like that. And that greatly reduced the amount of time required and the number of people required to do this job. So what data were they after? Well, let's say you're a ceramics manufacturer, and a real question on the form is, does your household have a flush toilet? Odd thing to ask, but if you're a ceramics manufacturer, you might want to know that because that's your market. Kitchen fixtures, household fixtures, bathroom fixtures, that's all things you can sell. So that kind of data and where it might be most needed in the country was a very useful thing to ask for. If you're a home builder, do the homes in your area, are they largely owned by people, or are most people renting? Are they apartments or living in somebody's second basement? Who knows? These are all things that would be useful to folks who build homes. What's the average household income by state? Who are New Jersey's a pretty rich state. You go out in the Midwest, things aren't quite so good. But this is the manufacturers and such would use this kind of data to set up their operations, to figure out where they're going to do the best for the country. So yes, flush toilets were actually a question on the census documents. So after World War II, a lot of more population. This was getting really slow and expensive. But some friends out there in University of Pennsylvania, Ed Mauchley and Eckert, developed this thing called ENIAC, which was like the first computer, not quite as we know computers today, but the ENIAC was actually a decimal accumulator. It was designed to calculate trajectories for weapons. But you could force it to do other things, and they took that concept and formed a company called there's various names for it because it went through all kinds of trains, Univac, Sperry Rand, and they formed a company to actually build a more general purpose computer. And in 1948, the Census Bureau made a contract with them to actually purchase the world's first commercial computer. And they did it. They developed it. And they sold serial number 1 to the US Census Bureau in 1951. It was based on ENIAC, same general concept, a little more general purpose computer, oddly enough using an acoustic delay line based upon a tube of mercury, recirculating sonic pulses round and round and round with an amplifier, which means you got to wait till your piece of data comes back around again. So the Univac 1 series was what you'd call I'll get to the word. Anyway, you got to wait for your data. So it's asynchronous. It's not a clock computer. You got to wait for your data to come by. And the offline storage that we would call a hard disk was actually magnetic tape. So no, it's not that ENIAC, not that Univac. This is courtesy of the guys on Thursday night. So we got paper forms. We got a computer. We want to make publications. We got to put something in the middle in there. Some way to get data about folks off of paper forms and into a computer so we can do the tabulation in this brand new computer that we bought in 1950 and got it delivered in 1951. And they started this project around 1950 or so. First, they started to look at the form and say, what can we do to the form to kind of make it friendlier for a computer to read in some generic form? So they decided they would take the user-written or enumerator, this army of numerators running around the country, would fill out this half of the form, and then when they got back to their offices, they'd mark in specific parts of data taken from this side over to here. Then they decided they were going to do away with the paper because paper's dusty, it shrinks, it expands, not even evenly in the direction in which it was rolled when it was made. It expands just a little bit. You get it human and it becomes much wider, comparatively speaking. So they had to do a lot of work to deal with paper. So they decided that they would deal with film instead. Let's get those images off this paper and recycle the paper. You don't have to store 20 warehouses full of paper. Now it's just a couple of dozen file cabinets full of rolls of film, like over here. So now we've got to develop something to put in the middle. So what is it? Well, this is where this device comes in. FOSDIC stands for Film Optical Sensing Device for Input to Computers. Now that comic strip that I showed earlier was not, I gotta go back, sorry. That comic strip character, FOSDICK, was likely an inspiration. You never know where somebody gets an idea. The apocryphal story is the gang of engineers got together with their wives in a Shoney's restaurant in Washington, D.C., and somebody cooked up that idea and said, that's it, that's what we're going to call it. But anyway, the whole device here was to develop an electro-optical device to take images on film, pass it through some electronics, and turn out a computer tape that they could sneaker net over to UNIVAC 1, serial number 1, and do the tabulation there. So they went to work designing a form. This is all the stuff that would have been taken by that army of enumerators. Then they would have coerced them into filling out by marking the form this way with, say this is a house number, house number 261, if you can read that. It's a column of marking places, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, or nothing. So now they're going to work on some equipment to actually deal with this image on a piece of film. So to do that, well, we got some ideas out there. If you take a B&K television analyst, crash it together with a movie projector, and put it in front of an asteroids video game, we're getting close, all right? We got an ultraviolet CRT here. We got a photomultiplier over here looking at it. If we stuff some lenses and a film gate in the middle, we almost got it. So here's that wrong one, that one. Here's that cathode ray tube. We've got a deflection amplifier to drive it. Now this is a unique amplifier because the project here is to scan that cathode ray tube by spot. Put a spot on that CRT anywhere you want under control of this thing called a scan control. We've got a lens to focus the image off the cathode ray tube onto the film, which has got the images on it. And now we're going to look at the light that's coming through the film where those enumerators made their marks. We're going to decide if there's a mark there or not, and then we're going to record it to computer tape. It worked. Here's some of the early experiments. We got a roll of film here. We got some lenses. The CRT is down here. The phototube is up here. And they could drive film with a stepper motor through the film gate, which is by the hand there, and get data. But don't look in the back of any prototype. You never know what you're going to find.
Neville?
Yes.
Why did they use ultraviolet?
Okay, I can explain that. The requirement, if you're going to put a spot and take a reading on it, then move to another spot, the first spot's got to go out. And if you're going to do this fast, that first spot has to stop glowing in fractions of a microsecond. And the phosphor they chose, ultraviolet P16 phosphor, is very, very fast. If you throw an electron beam on it, it'll light up in about 100 nanoseconds. And if you take that beam and move it away, it'll go out in about 100 nanoseconds. So you need, yeah, they actually need the same kind of speed in that B and K analyzer too, to get the high frequency response that's scanning across that image. So here it is. It's a completed model number 1. Fosdick model number 1, 1954. Here's that scannered head with the rolls of film and the lens and the CRT and the deflection amplifiers. Here's the decision stuff that's going to place that spot on the CRT in any place you want. And then over here is more sensing amplifiers to decide, okay, where did it stop on the film and what kind of reading are we going to get through it? And this is what they called a uniservo, clever name, for the recording tape drive that they wrote data to. And then the tapes got carried over to UNIVAC 1 via sneaker net. Now, this is actually very interesting, quote, tape, unquote, because this was the era of the wire recorder. They really hadn't developed good plastic oxide tapes yet. So this thing used basically 1/2 inch wide, 1/1000th of an inch thick wire recorder stainless steel. That's heavy.
I think it was actually a nickel alloy.
Thank you. Okay, all right. It's some kind of stainless steel, that's all I know. Yeah, okay. So how did this thing work? Well, here's an image off of film that they could get into a film gate in between the CRT and a photomultiplier tube. So you take a guess. Let's start here. Okay, that was set by a potentiometer, X and Y. Turn on the beam and start taking some sweeps. And eventually, the beam size is such that it misses that. It doesn't count that, or the lettering. But eventually you hit this big block. And that is called an index mark. So once you hit that, you know where you are. And then you can start looking at some of these columns to find out, are there any marks there? Well, let's take a little swipe here back and forth with a CRT spot under control of some gated oscillators in that control equipment. And if you don't find anything coming out of the photomultiplier tube as you're sweeping back and forth, there was no mark there. So let's continue on. Try again. Move up to the next spot. Move the beam again. Anybody see anything? Nah, nothing there. Keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going. Oh, we just ran across a white line. We got data out of that film. So now we know that marking column number 2 was marked. We can now record that to the tape and say, we got a reading. And knowing the column that you're on, and the mark that was found, that's the data that they would then take into UNIVAC 1 and process, align it with what the question was that was answered by the result in that column, and now you got some real data. The first digit of the house number was 2. Yes, sir?
So that's a negative.
Yeah, right. This is actually the way the form is printed. I showed it this way because if I showed it white marks on black film, I couldn't point to it with this thing. So yeah, this is the paper. You can see one up here. There's one right here you can come and look at from 1950, whatever the heck. But the film, which I'll show later, is a black image with white marks. So continue on. Same scheme, do this big scan, find the next index mark because the film was probably twisted, probably a little wrinkled. You got to find each one specifically. Do that spot scan, up, 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 bango, you got a 5, the next one. So now we know we got 2 columns worth of information. Put that onto the recording tape for the computer. So that's basically the way this whole thing operated. It got more sophisticated over the years, of course, but we'll get there. So how do you do this? Well, you need a cathode ray tube. In this case, it was a 5-inch tube with a P16 ultraviolet phosphor for speed. It happened to be a 5ZP16 by name. And I can tell funny stories about that too. But anyway, it needs to be very fast to get the response time that they needed. They run it on a very high voltage, 15 kilovolts, so they can get good, then tiny, best they could get spot size. And the yoke that they used, you know, we're all familiar with what television yokes look like. It's got a very low inductance winding for this horizontal scanning, and a television deflection yoke has a higher inductance winding with a lot less current through it through the vertical. This kind of thing here needs to have equal deflection. This is why I said it's the Asteroids video game, which is a vector scanned video game. So this has equal inductances in both X and Y windings, and therefore equal magnetic field for any given current in the X and Y directions. And to do this, of course, you need a really big amplifier. How did you do that in 1960? With a whole bunch of DC coupled vacuum tubes, like sweep tubes, a bunch of them put in parallel to get the current and the settling time and the stability that you'd need. So we got film. The film they used was actually blue sensitive. It's made by Kodak, standard 16 millimeter microfilm. The spot on the CRT was initially controlled by where do we start, or we'll take a guess with a couple of potentiometers to first place that spot. And the particular form I showed, and the one down here, has 4 horizontal rows that were able to be scanned by that first kind of equipment. And the lens they used was really just a standard and larger lens. And of course, I can tell stories about that too. But those provide the squarest, least distortion, close focus images from the film, from the CRT onto the film and through the film to the photomultiplier. So this uniservo tape drive is a really strange thing. This is where I mentioned that it ran on metal, real metal tape, that nickel alloy that you're, yeah.
I think it's similar
Can you,
to nitro.
yeah, so imagine,
Almaco. It's similar
yeah,
to Almaco.
okay. The deal is that it's hard, quote, magnetic hard. You either saturate it one way or saturate it the other. It's kind of like core memory. We'll get to core memory. Now, since this scanner, eventually the spot gets to where you want it, it takes time to do this scan, and your data is going to show up at who knows when. You can't say right now. It's going to show up whenever the scanner gets done scanning that column and comes up with an answer. And the interesting thing is that uniservo tape drive was designed to do the same thing because it was designed for mercury delay lines, which only could produce their data when that data came up. So it's an asynchronous device. It just writes data whenever it shows up, and throw a clock with it, and now it's on the magnetically recorded onto the track of tape. Ran at 10 inches per second, and if you really ran it tight, you could get 128 whole characters per inch. I think the last of the real tape drives could do about 6,000 characters per inch on real magnetic tape from the 1990s. But anyway, can you imagine now half-inch thick roll of recording wire, 10 inches in diameter, how much that weighed? Yeah, you're right. There's an apocryphal story of a guy taking a cart full of these things down the hall and takes a corner a little too sharp, and the top couple of reels fall off. This stuff is springy. It wants to unwind. It filled the hallway with a magnetic tape disaster. But anyway, in any case, as far as the data is concerned, one of these 100-foot rolls, like I've got here, kind of filled one of those tapes. So what did they do with it? Well, we weren't ready for 1960 census yet, but they did do a bunch of small things. They did a bunch of small kind of surveys. They may have taken like an area of, well, we've got a later one here for one particular county, Travis County in Texas. Who knows why? They often picked random areas of the country to get some idea of what's going on. But in they were even doing this back into the 1950s. Well, I even found a film of a survey taken of confectioners, candy makers. Why? I don't know, but that was something somebody wanted to know about, and they were willing to pay the government to do it. So we're getting close now to the 1960 census where they're thinking about doing this for real. So they're thinking about actually doing the survey of the whole country. I'll stop. If the yawn too much, I'll stop. Anyway, they started around 1958 to build a model suitable for doing the whole country's worth of data taking. And by that time, they had been able to do a lot more with that scanner. They were able to do a lot more recognition of the marks made on forms. They had better control over the CRT. They even developed variable focus, so you could tell the spot size on the CRT how big to make it. And that turned out to be a very easy way to help identify the markings and what they called those index marks to know where you are. But it was all done with plug board programmers. Anybody remember seeing a plug board? You take a wire from here to there, and you take the output of that integrator and you stick it into that sequencer, and then you take the output of that sequencer and stick it into an oscillator over here. And when the oscillator gets to a trigger point up there, then it stops, and you stop the CRT with a wire over here, and on it goes. But anyway, now the answer to the ultraviolet CRT question, why they picked ultraviolet. You got to program this thing. So they developed this elaborate method of bidirectional projection. You take the image on the CRT, project it through a lens onto the film, through the film to a photomultiplier. But then you also go around backwards and you put orange light from a projector lamp backwards through the film, through the lens, and back onto the face of the CRT. So some operator could say, oh, okay, I got to put this spot about there if I'm going to read a piece of data kind of around that point. And that was another big development, to be able to get the accuracy up enough to do a rather dense form like this one. This is an actual real 1960 population of housing and population census 1960. And those vertical column things that I called an index mark, they've now been able to shrink them to a little box. There and there and there and there. And they were able to read, you can get close here, come on up and look at this if you want. There's little marking circles now. They didn't need to deal with columns. They could take that form and they could straighten it on the face of the CRT, and they could get enough precision out of the deflection system to actually put a little square scan around each circle and say, is there a mark there? Do I see a change in transmission through the film as I do a little scribble around that little circle? And if I do, there's a mark there. If I don't, there's no mark there. So they were able to put all these questions, which we can actually come up and read one of these, and do all this in 1960. So here's a close-up. There's that index mark, all right? They could recognize that more accurately. There's a mark. There's a circle somebody filled in. There's a couple more that weren't filled in. And I can't quite read that from here, but they asked things like, was your father born in the US or not? What country, what region of the world was your father born? How about your mother? You know, and this is all very interesting genealogical data which would be used to help predict what Congress wanted to do and what industry wanted to do, what kind of trade associations questions they were asking about industry, asking Congress what to do. Yes, sir.
How did they tie the actual marks to the specific data element? In other words,
yeah.
Fine, they could read the mark.
Right, yes.
How did they know what question it was tied to?
Well, you know roughly where it is on the piece of paper because you found that square mark. And it was the job of UNIVAC to count each place they would search for a mark and look for an answer, and they would know that the 23rd one of those on the form was a question about where was your father born. That was the job of the computer to do, was to tabulate all that kind of data, correlate the question with the answer, and tabulate all that data together into how many folks were born in this country, how many folks' fathers were born in this country, for instance, and how many folks' fathers were not, that kind of thing.
So the UNIVAC would actually save that, each piece of element, each piece of data, it would be able to add up, like it would have a
Yes,
memory
it did. Oh yeah, that's why they bought that computer, was to do that. Now that they had to spool through magnetic tape because they didn't have any RAM, to speak of. You know, you didn't have anywhere near enough memory. You had about 4 kilobytes of memory in UNIVAC 1. You could only really run algorithms with that.
Would it be just the same question that they would kind of go through at one at a time? Like they had to just look for that answer?
Something like that. I'm really a little unclear about how all that happened. You know. So here it is. This is what it looked like. This was an actual unit that they built 4 of these to actually scan the entire households of the U.S., which turned out to be about 50 million of those forms that I showed. Sorry, I lied. It wasn't 100 million. It was only 50 million households. But anyway, here's a tape drive where the form-by-form data got recorded. This cabinet is probably power supplies. The one in the back there is most likely result processing from the scan. Now you see those black things on the right there? Those are totalizing tubes. They are what they call a magnetic deflection or magnetic beam switching tube. Basically, it's got a magnetic field going this way in it. Yeah. And then you've got circular electrodes going around this way, and there's like a grid mesh that also goes around in between. So you give it a pulse, and it'll take that conducting stream from one of those plates to one of those cathodes and move it around to the next. That's good old right-hand rule kind of stuff that I never, you know. I was okay with the right-hand rule until the physicists cooked up a left-hand rule. Then I was lost. So this is how they totalize. Keep pulsing this tube. Every time you look for a mark and you don't get a mark, you pulse this tube again. You pulse it until you found a mark, and now you know where you are. You can examine the tube and find out what beam is conducting, and there's your answer.
So would that be like one of those for each question?
It kind of looks like that, frankly. It does, you know.
In charge of indexing.
You know, if you want to look through all these, we can find that answer. The tape that was written, data that was written to tape was question after question after question after question after question off of one form. So the job of the computer is to cross-tabulate it, take all the forms, and look at one of the questions and totalize up the answers. It's quite a project, and I really don't know how they pulled it off in 1960, because they didn't have RAM memory, the gigabytes of memory they could put the whole thing in and then start adding up this memory location, that one, and that one, and that one, and that one. It's a mind-boggling thing. How the hell they pulled it off this early?
What's she doing there? Do you know what her job was? This woman sitting there?
Oh, she's an operator. She's going to be actually working with these films. Here's an example. Well, you know, any piece of gear, you had to get the most attractive, sorry, I'm going to be sexist. You had to get the most attractive secretary to sit and get in the picture, right? You know, come on. It's a bunch of guys. But here's an example film. Would come on rolls. You get it from Kodak. And you run a bunch of it through the camera, and it gets all screwed up because it's daylight loading film. But it's got images on it. And I got one here. You can come up and look at it after the end of this talk. You can look at it and see how the image is actually looked at. You know, who knows how many millions they spent on this? I spent $150 for that thing, and I could probably do an actual scan if I took the picture of the film, put it into my computer, and wrote a program to look at the JPEGs. You could do it.
See if they did the census right or not.
Right, yeah. There's another apocryphal story that they found an error in the 1960 scan. And this was in the 80s, the early 80s. So they were looking around the world. Anybody got a UNIVAC 1 with a couple of Uniservo tape drives on it? They found one in Venezuela. And they took a bunch of reels down to Venezuela and fixed the scans.
There was still one running in the 80s?
Yes. This machine was used in various forms up through 1968 because they kept doing these little surveys of various parts around the country. So here's a better view of it. Once again, we got that secretary there, and she's holding up one of the rolls of film. You know, everything's got to have an oscilloscope. You know, come on, you got to have a scope. You got to have some blinking lights over here. You know, you got to have some nice meters that flicker around. You know, you got to know what's going on. But over on over there, that is the actual scanner head, and we're going to show that next. Well, there's that beam counter tube. It's a 7490 IC in a vacuum tube. That's what it is. But here's the scanner head. This is the fun part that optical folks will enjoy. We got our film here. We got it going through a film gate, which is basically just the same as a movie projector except without the claw. There's a drive, a capstan drive over here with rubber grabbers for the tape because it has no sprockets. And that's driven by a stepper motor, and then there's some anti-slap relief going on over here. We've got a phototube underneath this cover, and we got a projection screen, and we got a lens. And this is where that UV from the CRT and orange light comes into play. They had a very fancy three-way optical system consisting of dichroic filters, dichroic mirrors, and a very elaborate optics to strip the ultraviolet away from the orange illuminator light and strip the orange illuminator light away from the ultraviolet, get the ultraviolet onto a phototube, and the yellow and orange-yellow light to the screen. So you could see what the hell's going on if you got a good image or the film jammed or who knows what, and you got to start again. They did more things with this. The Weather Bureau had been turning old weather data that was punched on taken from the last century before, put onto punch cards. The rumor says it was done over in the Orient to get, frankly, Japan after World War II, some good things to do. They hired a lot of folks, set them up with key punches, reading data off of paper forms that were written on by folks who did weather observations back into the 1800s. And they were classified by what the weather person saw. They could measure the temperature, they could measure the dew point, but you look up and say, what's the sky look like? The most descriptive thing that got me giggling was there was an actual descriptive element that you could check off called an angry sky. I have no idea what an angry sky really looks like, but that was a real category on weather data. So now what do? You've got a warehouse full of punch cards. Well, let's put them onto film. Let's put them onto this same microfilm, and now we can take that 10 warehouses full of old punch cards, turn them into a couple cabinets of microfilm. And you notice it's not the right shape. It's elongated, or actually shortened this way. They found out that you don't need this whole image. You can shrink it a bit because these are rectangular holes in a punch card. Well, let's make them square. It's easier to scan anyway. And you could get more of them on a roll. And they did that for a lot of Weather Bureau data with a specially built machine around 1964. But it's got the same thing. There's the film processing equipment. There's the projection screen. There's some kind of totalizer going on here. Here's a tape drive, which all that data got written to. This looks like a cabinet full of flip-flops. Two tubes, on a little plug-in chassis with a little handle to pull it out and fix the tubes, probably. They probably bought those.
I have some of those. If you
Yeah, okay, you probably do. All right. But you still got to have those. Yeah, 5963s, 5965 dual triode flip-flop tubes. So you got to have, but you still got to have blinking lights. You know, come on, this is the 60s. You got to have blinking lights. So they had to have those for a very good purpose. What mark was read off that card? So now we're getting closer to 1970. And transistors were starting to get fairly good, all right? There were actually some transistors used in FOSDIC for 1960. As it turns out, we can look on here. They turned out to be mostly display drivers, you know, driving light bulbs, rather than actually doing any of the computation, which was still done with tubes. By 1970, almost everything was transistorized. There were still a few tubes left, probably in the deflection amplifiers, because they didn't have, 300 volt, 10 ampere transistors yet at that point. Took about 2,500 transistors to do it. I believe they are mostly 2 and 414s because I have a big wad of them which came out of this gear when they threw it out. And the 1970 here census even got advertised. This is Clem Cadittlehopper from the Red Skelton show, and he's playing an enumerator for a household of folks who just didn't want to answer that form. So here's, by 1970, they thought the general public could answer these questions and probably had seen enough college-level tests, high school tests that you'd fill out a little form and fill in a circle and do it with what they call a scantron. And that's been a subject of some discussions. Scantron was a mechanical mark sensing device by resistance. The census folks tried that in 1946 and it didn't work out. They just could not make it work on a fast production basis because the harder a pencil you used, the less resistant or higher resistance you got. It also indented the paper more so that you couldn't even get to it with a probe to see if there was a mark there. So this is why they decided to go optical for the scanning. But anyway, here we go, more index marks, more places to fill in a circle. And they mailed these out to everybody in the country, every household in the country, and it worked pretty well. They got almost all of them back. Of course, you know, there's always the diehards that don't, you know, they want to throw you off their property if you're from the government. You know, we always got those. And they got most of them back, but they still had to visit a few folks. But the whole scheme worked pretty well. So what else did they do? Well, here's one that was built to initiate the development of the automated mail sorting system we have now. They started out with trying to read handwritten zip codes. That's like the first sort of mail is what do you do? Where's it going to go roughly in the country? So we got a whole bunch of dead letter mail. We put it on the film, and I can tell that story later. But there's the scanner, now probably doing a more of an XY scribble to get an actual image off of that. Here's a PDP 1120, one of the first really good computers that you could get. And frankly, right now, that exact computer, the actual one, is over at VCF. That got contributed over there, and they've got it in their warehouse, and someday they'll get it working and put it on display. There's the oscilloscope. Gotta have an oscilloscope, all right? And some adjustments for getting the thing set up. Of course, you always put the power supplies on the bottom to keep the cabinet from tipping over. You know how that goes. And so this worked out good, and this led to the development of automated mail sorters. Yes, sir?
Do you have any idea what they were using the oscilloscope for?
It's vacuum tubes. Shit goes wrong. Come on, you know. Stuff happens. Yes, you would be looking at, let's say, the best thing, the thing you'd really want to look at, the output of that photomultiplier, because transmission of film through film is dependent upon the exact roll of film, the exact way they developed it, the camera aperture that was set to when it was put on the film. You know, all these variables change the amount of light that comes through. Yeah, they would. Yeah, if it was kind of weak, they would make some adjustments. If it was too strong and saturating, they try to instruct the thing to go down in the amount of beam. Now, actually the beam off the CRT, the spot, was actually well controlled. They had feedback loops with a photomultiplier that was just looking at the face of the CRT, because as we all know, you get burn in on a phosphor, all right? Old computer monitors, you can often see an image in there. Well, they had images too burn in, so they had to do some regulation. And the funny story about that is that when they decided to replace the tubes, the CRTs in some of these instruments, they accessed all the old tubes because, you know, they wanted to buy new ones. And the marketing department over there at Census Bureau got this fabulous deal on a remanufactured collection of CRTs. Wow! They decided, you know, it's tight money, so you're gonna go to the lowest bidder. They got their same goddamn tubes back, just with new guns in them. So yeah, well, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. So anyway, they carried on. 1980, they carried on with the same kind of scanning equipment, now once again improved some more, but now we got a computer. We can take over a lot of that initial data processing in a slow computer. It may indeed have been a Xerox 820. They did get them from Xerox, we know that. And it could have been the 820, that initial 8-bit computer that they first designed the mouse for, you know, so Wozniak stole and called a mouse. It's, yeah, Xerox PARC, very likely. They gave up on the computer, and they basically hoard off the leftover computers, and the Census Bureau glommed onto them and hooked them up to the hardware for 1980. Unfortunately, I don't have pictures of that. Some of this stuff got lost over the years, and that's just unfortunately the way it is. By 1990, they were able to put a real computer next to it, a compact 386-33. Now we're getting somewhere. We don't need all that equipment in the background of FOSDIC 1960. We can now drive that scan unit with some D to A converters, X and Y, put that beam anywhere you want on the CRT. You can look at the photomultiplier output with an A to D converter, and you need one card to stuff into the computer, and then you can start recording discs on the 5 megabyte maybe hard drive. Okay, all right, but they built 24 of those. So unfortunately, all I have here is only a line drawing. I could not find a photo of it, and they had gotten on to vacuum control over the film, so that they could stop it and start it very quickly. And basically, here's the same scan. Here's the same arrangement, though. That CRT with a scanning lens, a mirror, a condenser lens, the film. Now we're going to split. This is where that ultraviolet and orange yellow light thing comes through. You split off the ultraviolet to a photomultiplier tube, and you project the image back onto the face of the CRT so the programmer can tell what the hell is going on. Now all they needed was a deflection amplifier, some sensing gear, little bit of control board, and this computer that just did everything. So more stuff they did with it. Well, they got involved in the early 50s with unemployment data. I found unemployment requests on that form. They take that survey every couple of months around the country of selected folks. So that kind of thing was turned out by the Census Bureau. They got involved in a project with deep ocean buoys to try to find the temperature, the ocean temperature, the current direct velocity, which way is the current flowing, and the direction. How fast was it and which way was it flowing? And that led to some very early information about what our oceans do. They just didn't know until that point. And those buoys recorded their data as stripes onto ordinary sprocketed film. And the guys worked out a arrangement where they could actually tell whether there was a mark in that particular spot. I have no idea what each of these stripes means, but it indicated the buoy was measuring the temperature and the velocity and the direction. They also took on an early version of what later we would call Palm Pilot. They called it FOSScript, distorted handwriting. Handwriting has always been a problem for the Census Bureau. Reading handwriting automatically was a real project. They never really did come up with a solution up through the 90s because it just took too much memory. So they got to the idea possibly we can teach our enumerators this distorted form of handwriting that they could actually read by sending a spot around a marking position and see whether it made a mark there. You can see like the A had a little tail here that went over the edge of one spot. The B started lower left and it had an extended stroke to the mid right, and the C would be the mid right and the bottom right. And they developed a whole alphabet to do this. This happens to be probably a test film. Somebody lost their carpal tunnel trying to write 2s all day to see how many times they actually got a 2 out of it and not some other character. That unfortunately never really went anywhere because, well, folks just weren't ready for it. So what happened? What happened to all this technology up through 1990? Well, Kodak had developed a frame sensor, and they sold it in somewhere around a $10,000 camera that was aimed at the press, where they could take a photo in the field, put it down a modem, and get it to the AP wire service quote, instantaneously. That was new in that era. Digital cameras were just starting to appear. And if you paid enough money, you could get a good sensor. Of course, you're also paying for all the ones that didn't work when you bought the one that did work. But this was coming onto the picture. So they decided, we don't need film. We can probably take those documents that folks filled out, put them in front of a digital camera, take images, get a computer file, and by addressing memory in the computer, do the same kind of searches for the data marks and get the same kind of data off the form without having to go through all this film and 700 tubes, 2,500 transistors, whatever else. It really kind of faded away. By 2000 and 2010, they had contracted it out. My apocryphal story says it was Martin Marietta who actually did the scan processing and turned the data back to the Census Bureau. Bit of a shame, but progress marches on. Of course, by 2020, the census was done online, and it's all over. So at this point, there's one left. There's one of the 1990 Fosdick machines. They preserved it. It's located in Suitland, Maryland. They get it out for demonstrations of folks who want to come by on that particular day when they open the shop to let everybody come by and see what does the Census Bureau do. There's one left. I've seen it. Unfortunately, I don't have a picture of it. So I'll leave it here. This is a commendation to this person who, yes, was my father. An appreciation of all the work that he did over 40 or 50 years for the Census Bureau. Basically, he was the lead developer of all of this stuff. They had a very small group of engineers and an even smaller group of technicians. I could name names: Herb Cook, Gordon, last name Gordon, a couple other folks who actually did the construction and building of this stuff and some of the development. And so, that's it. I'm done. So come on up. I've got examples here. If you really want to know how that scan thing worked, you can help me paw through all these schematics here, Yes, sir.
Was this developed in New Jersey?
No, this was done in Maryland. In the old, all of it was done, I can say half of it was done in Washington, D.C. The NBS, National Bureau of Standards, had a location in Washington, D.C. 1964, they moved out to Frederick, Maryland, and they brought all that gear with them and got much better labs set up instead of old World War II buildings in Washington, D.C. So, yeah, it was done. And, yes, sir.
Was the accuracy ever confirmed? I mean, we have all this equipment reading.
Yeah, it was all, I'm sure they did sample checks. It was pretty foolproof. The way they developed the scan, like that little circle, you wouldn't just try to shoot a beam through the circle. You could make a scribble around it and look for an interruption that would tell you that somebody made a mark there. I didn't try to go to that level of detail, because we'd be here until midnight if I kept going.
When the first system where the purple tube was
Yes.
being read,
Yeah.
would you have any idea roughly what the bit rate was? How fast was that data?
The typical, here's a typical document with that kind of vertical index mark. They would use two sides, and they had, when they did the filming, they had this, unfortunately, once again, I can't find a photo of it, but an elaborate photographic and page turning assembly that they had. That was all done in Indiana, but you can see you can get about 40 or 50 indications off. You could mark in on this kind of a form.
Did the government do that themselves, or did the Port Act or something do that for them?
All of this work that you saw, the microfilm was done. I had the name. No, well, they used Recordac cameras, yes, but the facility was out in Indiana, And it was owned by the Census Bureau, and I'd seen it as a kid. They had rows of microfilm cameras. As a 7-year-old kid, you're fascinated not really by the camera, but by all the stuff that goes around it. They had vacuum page picker-uppers that would pick up the page off the pile and place it in front of the camera. And then they had these rotary drafting brushes that would sweep across it to get the air out from underneath it so you get a flat image. And then they'd take the picture with a flash lamp on the film, and this whole process would go on pretty quickly. The scanning time took about 9/10 of a second to do a scan of that whole form, even in the earliest one. I don't know how fast Fosdick 60 ran, but the actual resolution on the paper was really only about 150, quote, and we would call it dots per inch on the paper. So it was not really a high resolution thing. It didn't have to be. In fact, didn't even want to be, because you got to ignore that background printing. So limited resolution, speed was what they were after. So in the end, they were able to take all that data from April 1st census. Folks were supposed to get those documents back in the mail. And in 3 months, they were supposed to turn out the aggregated data by state, by country, by region for the congressional maps to get redrawn. And they did it. They did it. So let's see, let's turn off the projector and we'll come on up here and have a look at some of this fun stuff. Now, one of the other quotes that I can contribute, can be attributed to Leighton Greenough, is that a CRT is only as good as its corrections. We all know about pincushion distortion and the corners being bent on a television. Anybody who's tried to line a television, you know, you got the yoke back and you're trying to twist it and bend it and try to get it into spot up against the neck of the CRT. Well, you can't do that for this kind of stuff. You need serious precision. This is, although not an actual one, this is the same style of gear that would have, the deflection yoke would be in here, this cathode ray tube would be coming through it, and you can adjust the position of the yoke, X and Y. You can adjust the tilt of the yoke by messing with these things. And this is what it took to get the corrections to be as good as possible, because we didn't have the mathematical capability in the computing equipment to deal with imperfect images. They had to get it as close as they could with the actual hardware. This is something, by the time they got to 1990, you had enough processing power. You could deal with simpler equipment and do the corrections in math. Yes, sir?
How do you adjust the yoke if it's a CRT? It's one piece of glass, isn't it?
It slides through the middle. I showed a photo of a yoke. The yoke goes in here. The CRT neck goes through the center. The bell flares out from here. These are very long CRTs, 1.5 feet long, with only probably a 15-degree deflection angle, nothing like the 110 that we've seen in television sets.
So it's magnetic?
It's magnetic deflection, yes. I didn't say that, but yes, it's magnetic deflection, electrostatic focus, and there's a good reason for that. Here's an example of a lens that they would use. This is one of the actual lenses they used in the Fosdick 90. Actually, this is the one I bought because it's a Nikon. We all know Nikon cameras. They made the very best lenses for this kind of purpose, even into the 1970s. The preferred photomultiplier tube was made by Hamamatsu in Japan. They came out on top for most even tubes, manufacturing to manufacturing. And you know, the Hunts got involved in silver in the 1970s or 80s, I guess it was. That caused a disaster to the film industry. They used to be able to get film that would take 2 orders of magnitude of density from white to black. Well, by the time the silver shortage came around, it was down to 1. And this caused them a lot of trouble. They had to do a lot of redesign to deal with much less density between mark and no mark. And that cost a lot of money. So anyway, come on up, have a look-see. We got films here, we got examples.
Hey, Neville?
Yes, sir.
Were those films archived for decades?
They still exist from the 1960 census and on. They still exist. The Census Bureau is in the process of scanning them back to computer files. Now they can do it with a full frame. So now they can see personal data. They got to hold on to it for 6 more years because of that 72-year hold time, and then they can release it to anyone who wants to look up their ancestors.
One more question.
Yes?
In the 50s and 60s, at the same time, there were educational tests given to students where they
Right.
filled out
Yeah.
circles.
Yes.
And the Iowa test.
Yeah.
Educational testing
Right.
service.
That
the
was-
SAT. Were they using the same equipment?
No,
Do you know?
not at all.
Okay.
Those were processed by the Scantron method, which was a mechanical pencil mark detector by resistance.
That's why they made you use the number 2.
The number 2 pencil, and don't press too hard, right. And that basically it's a bunch of fingers that comes down onto the form and measures resistance looking for a pencil mark. They tried that in 1946, and it was a total dud when they tried to do it en masse, all right, for a census. They couldn't make it work
But they made you use
reliably.
They made you use the number 2 because it's the specific resistance.
Yes, yes. Yet soft enough that it would make people wouldn't jam it through the paper, you know, to get a mark out of it. Right. Yeah, right. That's,
They never told us why.
yeah. Now you know. So anyway, references for all of this. Luckily, this has been documented. At least at the last machine was quite well documented how it worked, but it's all obsolete now because of digital cameras.
You know what's interesting? My sister used to work for the Census Bureau.
Okay.
And she's involved with the computer department, like writing different programs. to
Yeah.
do different
Okay.
things.
Cool.
And she stayed in some of the towns that you mentioned.
Oh yeah.
Maryland.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So it might be interesting
Right.
for her to mention
Yeah.
this to her.
Well, this will hopefully end up on YouTube. So, for instance, 1970 came along, and everybody filled one of these out. This was done by mail.
Now you got it all online, right? Same thing.
Yeah, right. This is what we got mailed out, and it worked pretty well. Yeah, that's another one. These are not actual ones from Fosdick, but it's ones I found at a flea market.
It's very light for brass. I wonder why it's so.
It's aluminum. It's anodized aluminum.
Okay, that's why, okay.
Yeah.
Better than a 19.
Yes, exactly. And what happened was,
I bet this makes all kind of crazy noise.
I was
We're good. We're gonna shut this down, folks, because all you're seeing is the backsides of NJARC's finest. So, thank you all for joining.
The table.
If you think you can do it, we'll do a quick pan of the stuff.
Sent me to a wide shot.
What's the future gonna be? When we're old and somebody's gonna have to do
Here's the deflection amplifier. It's got 3 sleep tubes in parallel.
if the computers don't pay for them, they're completely useless.
All these here
So what does that mean?
to drive the CRT goes.
Good night, folks.